Leo 28. Many birds on the limb of a large tree. Well, birds represent ideas and inspiration. And here we have many of them. And it's a teaching to do with the need for choice. The mind does come up with many, many different ideas, and we have to follow one of them rather than many of them if we are to achieve the best we can. The optimal level of success that we have is when we focus. A diffuse focus, when we're trying to focus on lots of things at the same time, that's not a focus. That's the opposite of focus. Focus is when we put the attention on one thing. And the power of attention is harnessing mind, and the power of mind is absolute. So we create all that there is in our lives out of the mind. And if the mind is not focused, then our reality is not focused. We're confused. And confusion is not a good state. Confusion has emotional implications, and it certainly has implications on our ability to cope with life. The seduction of choice suggests to us that the more freedom of choice we have, the richer we are. It's not true. If we choose to have 2 things or 3 things or 4 things or 5 things or many things, then what that does is reduce the investment, the commitment we have to one thing. It's pretty obvious when it comes to relationships. The arithmetic of relationships is that after one, more is fewer. It's a lesser experience. And the idea here is worth looking at. We do this with our lives. We might try and have a life which is varied, and that's normal. But to have it excessively varied means that we don't get to appreciate anything fully. We'll move on quickly from something before it's completely finished, before we've had that afterglow of success and assimilation of the knowledge that we've gained through our experiences. The secret to making optimal choices is to consider the long term. Whatever we plant as seeds, we get to harvest. This image is very important when it comes to behavior. If we spend lots of time doing silly little things for pleasure, that's not a good long-term strategy. Let's take an example of when somebody leaves school or university and they're in their 20s then. What to do? It's a good time to play, isn't it? You have more fun in your younger years typically. And a lot of people in their 20s think that play and freedom and going out and having lots and lots of involvements and traveling a lot and so on for fun, that this is a good thing to do because it's enjoyable. And the enjoyment of it has got a price. The thing to do in your 20s really is to establish your life's foundation so that the rest of it is strong. And that means building a career. If you have any intelligence about you at all, then you'll need to build a career at some point. And it's a lot easier to do that in your 20s than it is later. And to put off pleasure in order to do something which is wiser is the mark of maturity, and is not what we expect when we meet somebody in their 20s now. It was once, not very long ago, somebody would realize that unless they did the necessary when they're young, they would pay a price when they're old. And that was because it was taught, and now it's not really taught like that. Any options that we've got have long-term ramifications. If we do this, then that will happen. If we do that, then something else will happen. And just to make a choice spontaneously without considering the long-term ramifications, sometimes it's valid if your intuition is strong and good, or actually it really doesn't matter. It's just not an important thing. But when it's an important thing, it does matter. The implications of any particular choice ripple for the rest of your life. This is how we build our life circumstances when making certain choices. So try and take into account the later years whenever you're making a choice in the younger years. And all in all, you'll be happier with that. Not only when you get to be older, but in the meantime, to know that you're actually investing in your future is a good feeling in the here and now. It actually is a deeper, more mature, grounded feeling of well-being that you're looking for in that case. So in each moment of choice, we need to center ourselves to develop a sense of what qualities are coming from this choice. If we are rushed and excited and competitive, then that is a quality of being, and that will result in a certain attitude of life, a certain path of life. But if we're contemplative, peaceful in the heart, unemotional when we're making big decisions, then there's a much better chance that those decisions will be made wisely, with the information available and the implications of what is done taken into account. If we do this as a way of life, it builds the qualities associated with that attitude of maturity and peacefulness and so on. And consideration as well, consideration for other people as well as the future. And if this is what we bring to our choices, then this is what we're building our life out of. And our life will be based on the qualities that we want to have, the deeper qualities that we choose to be most important, rather than transient feelings of pleasure and excitement. Typically, we'll make a decision or choice based on the idea that everything will go our way. But it doesn't. Nothing is certain to go our way. We can affirm it, we can optimistically hope for it, but we can't expect it. We have to guard against the possibility of something going wrong. So some of our choices need to be based on the best that we can get, modified or at least moderated by the worst that we could get. In other words, hope for the best but plan for the worst. And in some cases, we can't make the choices we'd like to make because it's just too reckless to do that. It would be foolish. So these are the long-term implications of all of our choices. If you fancy somebody at a party and you get together with them that night, there will be implications to that. You'll have to stay with them or say goodbye. And if it's somebody with whom you have no conversation, then you're going to have to say goodbye. And they might not want to say goodbye. You have to think about that before you do things. If you go for a job because it gives you a lot of money, but you know you're going to have to break your principles, you're going to have to cheat and lie and deceive people and so on. And sooner or later, that'll eat away at your heart and soul. And it won't be worth the money that you've got in extra salary. And so on. You know, these things are the marks of maturity. A mature person will contemplate the implications of a choice and make these choices with more wisdom. And a foolish and typically a younger person would just do what they feel like doing, not even counting the fact that they're going to get older and they're going to get more responsibilities, and they just go out and have fun anyway, and they get themselves into trouble and whatever, you know, feels like that they're never going to have to pay a price for what they've done. But we always pay a price for everything that we've done. This is what the older person gets to understand. There isn't any such thing ever as a free meal. We're always going to pay for everything that we've had and everything that we've done. So apart from the long-term implications of certain choices, what's the essential secret of how to make choices? And the answer is not so much in scenes and scenarios that develop, so much as qualities that develop. If, when we're choosing something, we choose to do the right thing, we choose to underline the importance of in our lives of truth and honor and responsibility and dependability and loyalty. These things, most of us would hope to develop those qualities, and we would hope to have those qualities shown towards us by our friends. Well, if we do want those qualities to develop, then we have to make all of our choices based on those qualities. It's a very simple formula. If you're paid extra money to cheat and lie to people, you're certainly going to pay a bigger price because you're cheated and lied to. That's how it works. Life is actually essentially fair. It may be that the government isn't and your friends aren't, but life is. Life is essentially fair. There is justice. So we will get the results of our choices. Now, if we don't make choices, then we get confused. We can't handle more than a certain number of variables. A really exceptional person can handle 7 complex situations. More than that, even the best of us cannot cope with. And most people can't actually handle as many as 7. Typically 3 would be pretty good going. And so the idea that we can choose to have a dozen things happening in our lives, it just points to the fact that we can't handle any of them at all, not one. We're going to get confused and we're not going to optimize any of them.